Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am here with Sandy Sembler. Sandy is the CEO of SakredShe. She coaches women to embody feminine leadership, create conscious relationships, live life fully expressed, magnetize their deepest desires, and heal the past to purpose. Thank you so much for being here today.
So good to see you. So good to see you.
I'm so excited about this interview. I'd love for you to just kind of start by telling us a little bit about your journey and how you got into the work that you do today.
Yeah, sure. I think from a coaching standpoint, it feels like I've always been someone to offer advice or do the things. And I'm a serial entrepreneur. My family was an Amway family, and they would take me to functions and such at a very young age. I would babysit like all the diamond kids and such. And so I always jokingly say I was brainwashed for the good. And I mean that. I mean, such a great thing. I didn't graduate from college. I just ate those tapes up and such. And even though my parents divorced when I was 12, I really did learn so much about family values from those tapes, from listening to people from stage, and really got in my nervous system. I realized now that I was going to have a business with my partner, my husband, and our kids would never know daycare. If they were studying whales, we'd go see whales. And that has been a blessing and a curse in the sense that I know that all my relationships, I have attempted to make that happen. And it's not always the best thing, but the space where I'm at now, teaching women what I teach, it came from a healing space. I was working with women around the world and coaching and helping them launch their businesses. Also owned a mortgage company at the same time, sold that, and went from a space where I had left an abusive marriage. And it was when my son was 10 at the time. And it was brutal. It was one of those situations where I didn't even realize that I was being abused. It was so covert. And this was like before people started diagnosing things on Instagram, right? I didn't understand what was going on. Until I did. And I was shocked at how I had this perception that abuse happened, not in different socioeconomic spaces. And I actually spoke to one of the administrators of where I went. That was in 2010. I mean, look where we are now, because I want to get more involved in the organization as I am now. But anyway, I left that relationship and did it with grace and style, launched another business and was doing really well, coaching again, people in business. And I was single for 2 years. While I was going through that divorce, I didn't date. I was in Bible study. I was in therapy 2 or 3 times a week, because if I was going to do something, I did it, to the max. And I'll be darned if I didn't. When I started dating again, I literally was in another relationship with someone so similar. It was like same song, different record. And Sarah, it really took me, I was able to leave that other relationship with, my head up high. I mean, I knew I didn't feel like it was my fault. I really, I gave him grace and moved on. But that second time around, that relationship I was in, I did not understand. I worked for a jewelry company, and they had, we had designed a piece of jewelry that was named after my son. I was one of the top leaders, the Cameron coral pendant, because we were here in Florida. And I had women around the world that I was leading, and I felt such imposter syndrome, and it sent me down a spiral. And my best friend at the time, Rachel, who, is from Australia, she said, "You need to go see Tony Robbins. And you have to go see Tony Robbins." She goes, "You're so stubborn. You need to be sitting in the front row, crotch level. He's spitting on you. You need to I can't do her accent. It was just, and I'm like, all right, okay. She goes, "You're so stuck in your story. You're such a victim." And I love friends like that. And we'll talk about that here. Stage 3 friends, those friends that can see God in you. They see you through the eyes of the divine, and they know that there's something more for you. And that's what Rachel, and who Rachel is for me. She's no longer with us. SakredShe is actually, honestly, a culmination of my devotion for Rachel. Because she believed in me, in spaces where I did not. So yeah, she actually got me to get in front of Tony Robbins, and I had a 4-hour intervention with Tony.
Oh my gosh.
4 hours. And I swear to this day, I swear she orchestrated it, because she used to do work with him. And anyway, my partner at the time, that I mentioned, was there with me, and we were in Fiji. Our relationship broke up during that event. And it was, from there, I started doing deeper work with Tony for several years, and really just, it was as if someone had parted the Red Sea. It was like I could see things because therapy, as much as it helped me, it really only does so much. And what it does to our nervous system, it really literally makes us feel like we're doing something. It's the same way that you and I, we only talked for a few minutes before we went live, but I already was feeling really great. The dopamine's, rushing and all of this. And so our brain will think we're doing something. No one taught me about trauma. We never talked about trauma with a big T or little t. We never talked about why I stayed. We never talked about the nervous system. We never talked about how to regulate. It was basically just leave. And that was, I know that there's a lot more that happens now. And even this particular therapist, who's very, very well known in our area, I've gone back and in fact, she actually, I had her meet this new guy to make sure that he was okay, because I didn't even trust my own judgment. She's like, yeah, he's a great guy. Right. But I like to call it like it just messed with my head. But this working with Tony was huge. And so from there, I learned so much about the body and the brain. I started studying habits and all of this. And I realized that, he talked about me being in my masculine energy. And, there's always that one token gal, if you've watched his Netflix show, I'm Not Your Guru, there's always that one woman who's like the dude. And that was me. And I didn't understand it. I didn't get it, the whole energetic piece, but he pointed out, you're in survival, honey. He's like, sweetie, you're in survival. Your success has come from being in survival. And I'm just now, honestly, in the last few years, really able to, divorce myself from hustle culture and really be able to bring in the abundance and feel good about it without me feeling like I have to be constantly pushing off from the bottom of the pool. Pushing off in the bottom of the pool and have a problem to push up against. So SakredShe came to be actually in 2019. Is my healing journey. I'm kind of a junkie when it comes to teachers and healers, and I've worked with some of the best teachers and healers around the world. And from Tony to David Data to John Weiland to Kendra. I mean, there's so many people that I've worked with and studied hypnosis and NLP. And I want to be able to, when I meet with women, help them see that they're not the reason why they keep choosing the same situation, not just in partnership. It could be in friendship. It could be in their career path. It could be even not wanting children. I mean, we literally are vibrations. We're satellites. And our bodies are always transmitting something, and we literally can shift that. But it does take conscious practice. And so the embodiment for me was huge, because I was so shut off from basically my heart down. And I really wasn't feeling a whole lot. I just had a whole lot up here in this big old noggin. And it wasn't until I started, moving my body and getting comfortable with my body, not just in a seductive way, which so many people think, feminine movement is, but I mean, even understanding that my body was addicted to pain. My body was addicted to being heartbroken.
Yeah.
And so, so it just sort of opened up its door. I met my husband, John, in the midst of, my journey. I went through I call it a masculine cleanse, where I healed my relationship with my own masculine and really men in general, including my relationship with my son. And so when I started dating again, I had no intention of staying in Florida. I was moving to California after my son went off to college. Met John, and even though he was not necessarily in the deep work like I was, my body was so trained from all of the work I had done practicing, right? Because even though you and I, are women here, I could hold the masculine pole for you. And even though you're in Arizona, you could hold the feminine pole, and I could. There's a way we could practice, and your body would feel what it feels like for me to be in that Zoom redwood holding you. And I had done that so much for years that when I started dating again, when I got in front of this man, my body was like, oh, he's a trustable dude. And so, and here we are, 5 years later. So that's a little long story of how I got here. And I love what I do. And it's just, I don't just work with women who've been abused, but it really came from a place of, I couldn't believe how many women that I had coached through Stella and Dot, the company that I worked for, who were such go-getters. And but they were so masculine, they didn't even realize it. And even though they didn't necessarily look the role, the way they thought, the way they walked, the way they talked, and also this residue of being pissed off
Yes.
in general.
Yes.
Like just like a residue, like they just needed to go take a shower, but they just couldn't like rub it off. And just like me.
Yeah.
And that's the way my mama raised me to, she loved my daddy so much, but he betrayed us. And even though she loved him deeply, she wanted me to always be able to take care of myself. And as you know, from, trauma, we're very hypervigilant, and that there's always a good thing with that. I'm very hypervigilant, especially when it comes to homes. That's why I'm in real estate too. Our home was foreclosed when I was a kid. And I didn't really understand that till recently. This is interesting. May I share about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear.
This is interesting because I didn't, I'll back up. One of the things our teacher has taught us is that, John and I, my husband and I, we have a great relationship, and that last 5% will get healed in partnership. We'll get healed in partnership. Even if you are 22 and you're getting married, John and I were in our late 40s when we remarried. Which actually can sometimes be worse because you have all these other people, all these other patterns, all these life experiences, which is why when we work with couples, John and I do some work together with couples, when it's fitting, we will talk about trauma. We will talk about attachment style and such. But that last 5% gets healed in partnership, because those situations will whack-a-mole. Like, oh, there it is. Oh, there's that wad of hair. I told you I'm from South Carolina. My grandmama's always like, okay, he looks good, smells good. He's a good guy, but where's the wad of hair? And I'll be darned, the wad of hair. And John's, he has given me permission to share this now. In fact, you're probably one of the first podcast, the interviews I've done that we're coming out of the closet, so to speak, because our relationship went through a big dark night of the soul over the last year and a half when we bought this new house. We had never bought a new house together before. I buy and sell houses all the time. Mobile home parks, apartment complexes. I love real estate. And he was 26 years at Chase, 26 years in his ex-marriage. And also, I think he's only purchased 2 homes in his life. Yeah. And then he meets me. And we were very different, which is beautiful polarity. But it was one of those things when we bought this house, it really brought up so much because he wanted me to literally decorate one room at a time, which sounds so what's the big deal? But for me, considering that I moved 12 times at a very young age, we lost our house at a very young age. I remember a house that they were rehabbing that they had ripped plaster out. They had Visqueen, that really heavy plastic in the bathroom. I remember being cold. And that didn't come to me till I did some deeper trauma work over the last year of why I wasn't being bitchy. I wasn't being disrespectful to him. It was almost survival. My body was like, I must do this. And I share this because I want the world to know that, the space of being aware in relationship is so important. Being able to self-reflect is so important. Emotional intelligence. If I was ever to be single again, and I don't see that happening, but I work with a lot of women, who we clear out the cobwebs and then they get to do their sacred relationship vision after all the healing. Yeah. I would think that for me, to get really clear, like I'd rather be alone than be with a man who isn't self-aware. I'd rather be alone than be with a man who cannot call his own foul. Luckily, my husband can. That was one of the things for me that was super important. But it really did, send us down a spiral of him going into scarcity, me going, you can't tell me what to do. And this bizarre, like the Tasmanian devil meets, the Tasmanian devil. And it just, luckily, we both are growth oriented, and it set us into a space of going deeper. And I'd say we maybe have 1% more left before we are totally healed. But it was 4% of grueling, and it was perfect. It was perfect, and we still are in the midst of it, and I love it because we're having deeper conversations. But I always, just like you, I just like you, my life is my playground, and I choose to teach from my own experiences, and which is why I can have the relationships, or I can have numerous different businesses and different career paths, because I've been there. And so I believe, for me, it gives me a lot of credibility. But that, again, I don't think that we really are doing ourselves, our clients, or the world a service if we're not talking about the way we see the world, the model of the world that we're seeing it through, and understanding, because we literally are just like 6-year-olds, playing in this meat puppet, and we're like this meat suit, and it's not super romantic at all, but it's so healing if you want to act, if your goal is sacred union. And for me, if it's not holy, I don't, and I mean, like, holy in the sense that, is this helping us get closer to God? And I don't mean in a religious way, but, is it, I want to love better through this relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
You've been on quite the journey. And I love that you were successful before discovering feminine energetics, and then you're still successful with that. And I think that, that it's like a new frontier for me. Learning about feminine energy completely changed my relationship to relationships. And it was absolutely transformational. And now I'm like, and how does this apply to the rest of my life? Like, can I have a business and be in my feminine energy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is for me. I know, and I will share this. I actually had a call with my mentor before my call with you. And I was telling her how it's interesting, because we're peers, and what I love about her is she's been in partnership for almost 20 years with 4 kids.
Wow.
And doing this polarity work, because there's not a lot of people that actually are. There's a lot of teachers out there that teach like the embodiment place of that sexual yoga piece, but they're not necessarily in partnership. I'm fortunate to have several teachers that do, because I sought that out. But to your point, pleasure, I think it was one of the questions that you had asked me. Pleasure can be something as simple as, the way we end our call our call, how slowly can we deliciously hit end, on our phone. But from when I first started studying this work, I was totally in my feminine. I made sure I set up all my bills on bill pay, auto pay, but I was so in my pleasure. How much can I eat? How much can I sleep? How much can I be in my pleasure practice? And I didn't want to come out of it. But the relationship I have with my inner masculine now is one that is solid. But I will admit this too, Sarah. When I met John, he was so solid, Eagle Scout, solid John. Just solid lumberjack John, that I was so blissed out with his responsibleness that and he loved it, because he had never been, we have a fun video called "He Fell in Love with My Hot Mess." It's like this fun video. I'll have to send it to you. It's hysterical. And he talks about that. But we both got addicted to the feeling of me being who I am, and then him being who he was. But we actually weren't serving each other, because his own feminine wasn't getting nourished, and my masculine was not stepping up. And so we really, we talk about the 3 stages of relating. We had to fall apart to come back together, because we realized we were just really, we weren't helping each other. We're actually enabling each other to stay almost childlike in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it wasn't serving your growth. But I think it does feel delicious for a little while when you've been in your masculine all your life and then you discover feminine energy and you're like, I just want to live here now. Like,
It is delicious, and and it's fascinating too how many women that actually, may make more money and provide more than what their partners do, and how there is a way for that to happen as well, where
yeah,
you can be providing more, but also she who must be provided for. But there's a
yeah,
way that you can define what is provision. It's going to look very different. I know for us, one of the things is my relationship was always going to be my muse. So when I was dating, I would make sure I shared that with people. I didn't necessarily think I would work with my partner, but I would want them to be comfortable with that. And it's so delicious to be in the feminine. And I don't know about you, but I can totally tell when I haven't actually allowed myself to feel, to feel like yummy.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It just feels like I can, I need to scratch my back or something. And, I'm curious for you when it comes to self-care. I mean, that was like, what the heck is self-care? You know, I mean, when I was waiting tables, back in college and when I lived in Atlanta, I was like, I worked doubles and triples. Cause if I told you if I was going to do it, going to do it. So to turn the dial down. But I learned something really neat about self-care the other day. And I actually have really implemented this with my teaching. And I'm curious, how do you view self-care when you think of your own self-care? I'm just curious your definition of it.
It's become much more important to me, but I don't know if you get into human design at all, but I'm a generator. I love to work. I have my own business, and working really fuels me as long as I let it. And as long as I can tell for me, so I have my things that I do for self-care. I go to the gym, like I go to Pilates. I try to get enough sleep. I eat healthy, try to stay hydrated. But for me, like the energy, it's more about the energy of like, I can tell when I'm really in my masculine and not embodying my feminine just by the way that even my dog responds to me or my partner responds to me or the way I feel in my body. Like I feel different. I move different. I speak different. And I'll catch it and I'll be like, there's a little bit of a disconnect here and I just need to like
Mhm.
sink back in.
Well, may I point something out? May I offer your reflection based on what you said?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you go back and when you watch the recording and when you
Mhm.
talked about, the things that you do for self-care, it just watch your expression. So this is fascinating, and I'm getting ready to launch this course around respecting men and boys. It's
Yeah.
super, super, super profound. I'm so excited about it. But one of the things that came to me was I was thinking about the things that I love to do. Like I love how I feel after yoga. But when I think about yoga, whether I'm going to pull something up on the computer or go to yoga class, it's like yoga. But when I think about going outside and taking my shears and cutting these palms, and actually I like to make my own arrangements for my house. Like it feels nourishing. So, or I have 3 corgis. I love in the morning how they jump on me, and it's just like that's part of my self care, right? Right, yeah, exactly. So that feeling right there, if you compare that to when you were sharing the things that you were talking about. So what came to me was self-care really is when we feel good, when we even think about doing it, not how we feel after we're done with it. Because we all know we should brush our teeth, but I don't go like, oh, I love brushing my teeth. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and my husband, however, I actually we were like in a tiff a couple weeks ago, and I was um he loves to floss his teeth. Like I said, I'm jealous of your teeth. You're spending more time touching your teeth than you are touching. But for him, that he really gets jonesed about like cleaning his teeth. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds wild, but for me, it's, I love that whole sauna thing, I shared with you before we came on. Like, I'm so excited that it's 100 degrees outside in Florida and I get to get in my sauna, even though nobody really understands that.
At least you got the cold plunge too.
Exactly. That's another thing. Like, I get excited about getting in the cold plunge. Some people like, and then they get in, they feel better. I heard the other day, I think it was on one of their advertisement. No, it couldn't have been their advertisement. They never would have said this. Like 2 minutes of the cold plunge is like equivalent of the dopamine rush of like a line of the white powder.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I doubt that's probably in their marketing. I saw that on somebody's that's actually has one, but
Yeah.
he's a scientist. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that with you, that you put that through your filter, because I went, yeah, it came to me after a meditation. I was like, wow, because even meditation, I don't consider that self-care anymore, because like if I do like a Dr. Joe, but if I do a moving meditation, that's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely different. It changed the game
Yeah.
of how I view self-care. I still floss my teeth. I still will do yoga, but it's very different than the things that I just love to do. And back to what you said about work. My husband was, because he left his corporate job and we do work together. He manages a lot of our back end of our business, and because he's great with automation and such. But sometimes when I'm frustrated, he would say, you just don't want to work anymore. You just don't want to work. And I'm a generator 224.
Me too.
Are you? Okay. So I totally get you, sister. I do. And it's like, we could talk and talk and talk, because I've learned this the hard way. But he would say, I just don't think you want to work. And he would project that onto me. And I was like, no, because the thought of coming on here with you, I was so excited about coming on here with you. Like, I really was thrilled. I love like setting up my microphone, and I love setting up all my things, and my flowers are here, and but there's some people who this would feel like they know that they should put themselves out there, but it's very different. So I was like, I don't want you to do that anymore. We did an imago dialogue around it. I said, it really bothers me that you are projecting that onto me, because I really do love what I do. It's actually the way that we were working in that particular project that really was a buzz crunch, because he's a projector, 6'1", and he's an engineer. So he's my buzz crunch sometimes, and you understand human design. So he's had to learn how to speak juicy. And that is fascinating to watch. So he has to speak juicy, but I also realize what that means for me. If we are going to work together brilliantly, I call it husbanding myself. I had to husband myself to know that for John to speak juicy is not easy for him. So I was beating my head against the wall with him speaking. We hired coaches around it. He's like, what the hell does that mean? Like, we're not in bed. What do you mean? But it's just the languaging, because he'll say his job is, because that was his job, is like, what's going to go wrong with this? He writes code, like, what's going to go wrong with this? And I'm like, what's going right? And which so so that part of like being able to, as a woman, knowing what I need, being in leadership, and it's that queen energy of Google mapping, like what would make the world better. The world's going to be better for me not to expect John to speak juicy, and for me to actually fill myself with, friends and women like you that actually get me, and that to put myself in situations where I'm filling my own cup, and not in the normal way when we talk about meeting our own needs, because it was so frustrating for a while with us working together. And I had to get really clear that, I don't need him to do that for me. I can actually do it for myself. And a lot of it came through the way I started viewing, self-care. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Just filling yourself up. And I feel like you were I had a question on here about communication and communicate. Like, is this what you were talking about when you talk about embodied communication and like,
well,
your needs?
yeah. So I'll share about that. There's 3, and I'll send you a link and get you one in the show notes, but there's what we talk about is the 3 ways of relating, the 3 ways of communicating. So stage one is like baby love, baby communication. It's, it's all about us. It's all about us, roles, meeting our own needs. It's like, what about me? What about me? And the communication in that would be closed-hearted generally. I didn't get my way, kind of bratty, closed-heartedness, what have you. Stage two is where we all want to live. If we all can live in that healthy space of your needs are my needs and vice versa. And in communication, it would look like, Sarah, when I had to reschedule my call and you blah, 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 it made me feel this. And I thank you so much because I felt so received. That's or what I would do is the third stage would be making art with it. And so what I could have done is I could have turned the phone around and made a video and been like, and said, like, thank you. And so, all my clients have pom-poms, and we have, I'm surprised I don't have it in here, like a take two. We have take two, little placards all around our house.
Yes.
You can see some of those on our Instagram, the reels, but that stage three is actually of communicating, but also in relating is, it works with friendship as well, which I think is another question you asked is, we're in service to bring us closer to making something holy. And, if you and I got to know each other better and I found out your greatest desires, like my friend Rachel, it's be like not another minute more. Like I would come to you and share a reflection if you're open to it. And I would share, what I was witnessing. And I love you too much to not bring this up.
Yeah.
Right. It's that willing to, it's like that Kali energy sometimes, because sometimes it's not going to look very pretty.
Yeah.
It's, like for the feminine, who's ever more female, a feminine and the relationship, like we would rip their throat out if we felt like that our partner wasn't in integrity. And the same thing can happen with us as women, because like you and I've met through a networking group where there's a lot of beautiful women and feminine leadership. There's a lot of masculine energy. The reason why the group works so well is that there's a lot of what I'm talking about, like, no, I love you too much for you to fill in the blank. And we'll notice when we get so neutral that we're staying in that stage two, that we get bored with what we're doing. And so I only want to be around women that are stage three friends, and that aren't willing to, if I come to them talking about my husband, well, yeah, I can see that. And oh yeah. And they basically pump me up by telling me what I want to hear versus, well, Sandy, have you really looked in the mirror? Have you done the 4 questions? Have you done this? And and also sometimes it could look like, and I've had this before in a relationship where, my mentor said to me, I don't think this is the right relationship for you. I actually really don't. And I was stunned when she said that years ago. Wasn't with John, but with someone else. But she loved me too much. And, I didn't mean I changed it right then. And it actually risked the relationship. But, that's what I mean too. But the art, I call it art out of the mundane, is, how you asked me about the skipping practice, like where that came from.
Yeah. You did a 90-day joy challenge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That came from, I had gotten out of a pretty toxic relationship. It was the last toxic relationship I'll ever be in. And my teacher at the time said, Sandy, you are addicted to being sad. Like I mentioned earlier, you're addicted to having your heart broken. When is the last time you felt childlike joy, which is total feminine energy, right? That curiosity of what's on the other side. And I was so shut down. I mean, even though I'd had the intervention with Tony and I was going to all the things, I had not really allowed myself to feel a lot because I was still getting my worth from these relationships. And this was years ago. So they gave me a skipping challenge, like literally that we can train, if we can get addicted to the feelings of being sad, right? We can get addicted to the feelings of being happy. And so literally and I had to video record myself because again, the feminine wants to be seen, heard, and understood, right? We want to be seen, heard, and understood. Again, the brain doesn't know the difference, which is why all of my calls generally are, we're looking at each other because again, I may hold the masculine pole and allows a woman to get in her nervous system what it feels like to have someone totally receive her, messy, angry, whatever it is, as long as her heart's open, I'm good. So I had to record myself for 2 minutes, and I had to do it in public. And, energetically in the field, it just works that way, because then we are aware of it, and then we acknowledge it. And then, of course, in the field, then there's an acceptance, and then everything comes. So that was one of the first practices. So we don't have to be like all on our sheepskin and all gooey like this, although I love that. Embodiment for me, the way I teach it is that. And how can we actually have our practice be moment to moment to moment? And that really came through for me even more during COVID, when we couldn't meet for, goddess retreats, and, we couldn't go to Sedona. And it was, how can we, even in this moment, really bring in more of what it is that we truly enjoy, and not just pleasure. How can we have sacred rage or sacred anger? There's nothing like, giving ourselves permission to feel whatever in the hell we're feeling. Something that in my home was not okay. I mean, it was not okay growing up. So I've had to train my body to be okay to feel a variation of emotions, and if we are in our feminine, they're changing all the time.
I saw a reel where you had a bat.
Yeah. Totally. If I had to say, I have like I have like a treasure chest, and and there has all my, there's a damn it doll. You can order a damn it doll. And there literally it's a damn it doll. And so, there's, and again, you just want to make sure. I have a rage playlist, and you just want to make sure that if you do this practice, that you nourish yourself in the beginning, and like talk to your little self and let her know that she's seen. And then you go into the practice, and then you want to make sure that you're loving her after the fact too. That's one of the things that I realized that was missing from my practice for a while. I wasn't taught. And as I've gotten to know my little girl, who I call Simone, very intimately recently, she really needs to be seen. So I don't know about you, but I think there's 10 women that live inside of us, and I teach those different archetypes, and really 20, because they all have a toxic side, and they all serve a purpose. Like I think it's fantastic. But the art of the mundane is fantastic. I mean, we mentioned the whole sauna piece, and it's a great way to change people's state too. I mean, if someone's angry with you or frustrated with you, to be able to not be condescending, but if you're upset with your partner for not taking the garbage out, you could dress up as, like put a little apron on, and you could have your feather duster, and you could, pretend like that you just entered in, right? Hotel whip, and he comes in, and, it's your Casa whip. And I'm sure everybody knows that's your last name, right? So right. But there's so much fun you can have. Relationships, if we are wanting to be with our partners forever, why not make it something that could be fun and also really honest. It keeps it really fresh and honest. And I will tell you this too, my Rachel, who I mentioned, she passed away suddenly during COVID. And she actually did not know this work. She thought I was just wild. And I just let her know, you are one of the reasons why I'm doing this work. And she's like, I know. And but it was incredible. But when she passed, I actually had all of my friends from South Carolina. We went to high school together. We were in the mountains, and they don't know this work at all. And so they wanted to pray and, be around me and such, which was beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I needed, because I was pissed off, because she was taken from us very suddenly. She went in for surgery, and she didn't wake up. And she was my ride or die. She still is, right? And I messaged someone that I was in teacher training with, and I said, I need to be witnessed. Will you witness me? She's like, yes. I went downstairs, told the girls I'll be back up. And I went downstairs, and we did a FaceTime, and I cried, and I just beat the crap out of this. And I was angry, and and I just, for 10 minutes, she held space. It was like a start and a stop. And and there was such freedom in that, to feel the grief and the way I needed to feel it. Because grief is like glitter. It's like that glitter song. There's a song called Glitter, and it's so good. because glitter, it just pops up. So yeah, so that's what I mean by having a network of some close friends that are stage 3 that you can say, hey, I need to be witnessed. And what I love too is, I've had friends of mine who use that practice, and can you witness me? And she said, and I don't want you to ask me later anything about it,
Yeah.
even mention it to me, and a very tight container. And I didn't. So I saw her the next night for dinner, did not even mention it, because we were in a group of, with a group of other women, and found out a couple of weeks later, she had found out some really unfortunate news about her partner, and she just needed to be seen right then. And what a gift, right? To be able to do that. Again, that's not the way I was raised. That was not the friendships that I had, not even 7 years ago, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
You have a master class on magnetizing the masculine. I know you can't obviously share your entire process in this interview, but what would you tell women who are like who are wanting to embody the feminine and to magnetize the masculine?
Yeah. Well, obviously anyone can come to the masterclass. It's free on Tuesday. It's a different way that I'm teaching feminine energy too than I have in the past, about tapping into, the holiness of who we are, right? I think a lot of it is really owning who we are. I mean, really getting really clear about the person in the mirror. I'm going to go through like these different steps of the way I like to teach this now on next Tuesday at 7 Eastern. But there's something around letting every single, like I mentioned, Sacred Respect is about to get launched, and it's a really low ticket item. It's like 30 days every day, and you learn the way of how to not emasculate men, essentially, and why do we emasculate men, and there's this healing that comes from it. But there is a way that we can have every single man out there in the world, including boys, be enchanted with us. And it really is around honoring who they are in general. And let's face it, as much as I love the fact that women's rights and we can do so many things that so many of our ancestors couldn't, there is something to be said that it actually has also really hurt us, because we're doing more than we ever have. And I've never met more unhappy women.
Unhealthy.
Unhappy, getting sick, adrenal glands, what have you, and role reversal. And it's, just ultimately they have it all, but do they? And by the way, just like me, I mean, that was me. And so it's really about sovereignty and so much more. I mean, because being a magnet for abundance is beautiful. It doesn't have to just be with your partner. It could be literally like, why not light up everybody that you're around? But there's a nuance to it, because it's not flirting. It's not being seductive. It's actually just being this radiant light. And if we pan the room, if you and I, went out to dinner and we just, we're eating our spiritual popcorn and watching everyone, and we were watching the closure of most of the women around us, it's because they're not comfortable in their own skin. It's because they don't know their own, like they don't know what they don't know. And that was me. I mean, when I went to Miami for an embodiment workshop, I literally left. It was like when I first started doing movement, I literally left the conference. And it was 6 months later, another friend of mine, another stage 3 friend, we were at a Tony event, and she literally took my wallet and she went and registered me for an $8,000 workshop. She's like, you're going, you need this. And, I don't know if we need to spend, $8,000 on, but I know she was right, that I needed to actually get comfortable in my skin, in my movement. And what I mean by that is that literally understanding that trauma is held in our hips so much.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I can feel I can feel it here. I can feel it at that little scoop, the scoop at the base of our spine. So many women now, their backs to their tush are flat. They don't have that nice little curve that we're supposed to have. And it's not just so we look good in our jeans. It's actually because our coccyx bone generally is turned under, which is our tailbone, right? And it's like fear-based too. So, there's a way that we can walk that actually will make our hips become more fluid And so there's just so many little things. And that's why I love the way I like to teach this work from embodiment, because it is a moment to moment practice. Like even how you and I end this call, will we just go, okay, bye, slam our computer down and, you know what I mean? Like, we're all guilty of it, but it's intentional. And the intentionality is our masculine that will allow ourselves to actually let our feminine just flow like the lines of the Zoom rectangles that are here.
Yeah, I love that. And I love it because you can start now. You don't have to wait until you meet a guy or you go on a date. You can literally start in the privacy of your own home. And then in interaction, when you go out into the world, of just like opening up your energy and being, like you said, a bright light, and just being able to receive is a huge gift to the masculine that they are craving, because it's so rare.
It is. And it is so, and also, let's face it, so many men, their own feminine is bruised and they can't receive. So we're really walking around in stage one, like I mentioned, not able to receive, because we're a lot of times it's that codependent energy is in stage one. We give and give and give and give because we're so uncomfortable receiving, and we're hoping that we're going to give to get.
If I give enough, then I'll be able to receive. Yep.
Exactly. Right. Yep. So it's so innocent. I think most humans, honestly, are good people. I think we're just running a bunch of patterns. We just need an upgrade. We just need a good upgrade. And some upgrades are going to look very different for some people, depending on, what their trauma was. Trauma can be a little T of, I had a client who was telling me that, she had abandonment, some abandonment issues and wounds. And it really stemmed from, she was in a crib. Her parents, they lived in the suburbs, and her parents went next door. They had the monitor on, and they went next door to go have like a drink with their friends. And the house caught, like something caught on fire, and she was in her crib. And even though she was fine and they came and got her, she had this feeling of fear of fire, and also fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, fear of being, because she was little, like being in a cage. And so trauma work will help that. That's really, she was in danger, but it was like the fire alarm went off. So she heard that. It wasn't even in her own room. So that would be like a little T, right? Do you know what I mean? But it's still, trauma is not the incident. It's the way our body feels when we think about it. And that's where PTSD comes from. It's why there's a certain part of the year that I can smell like football season, and I think about my ex, and I can feel my body. So I just have to do something to not override it, feel it, and then release it.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, we can't, what you were saying about how with your first therapist, it was all talk therapy. I've had that same experience. I went through years of therapy, and it did help to an extent. Like you said, it makes me feel good. It feels good to be heard and to be able to talk about things. But the real work and the real healing for me has been through my body, somatic work, embodiment. That's really where the healing is. And I'm still on that journey.
Yeah, it is so interesting to your point about the breath. And I don't think most of us realize that we aren't breathing all the way down into our belly, right? Our breath is supposed to be actually very deep, very slow, whether you're a man or a woman. And I was doing a session with a client yesterday, and we were measuring her breath count within 30 seconds. And it was really, really high, and she didn't even realize it. But you could see how her scalings, everything was so tight here. And just to learn that practice of just slowing down, and even if you have to set your alarm, let your masculine set your alarm just to do 30 seconds of breath. I'm sharing things that I've had to do, because if I have a deadline, and especially if I'm loving it, generator too, right? I will like go and go and go and go.
Food.
Yeah, exactly. Beef sticks all the way, like they're organic, but like there's these ostrich sticks, but I can go and go and go. And I have to, I have to set up these little, these governors, so to speak, these little speed bumps, or it's a quality problem, right? That we love what we do. It's a quality problem. And I don't ever want to burn myself out on it because of that. And that's on me. It's not on John, like you and I were talking about earlier. It's on me that my inner masculine is the one that needs the healing piece. It's when we look to somebody else to salve that wound. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a huge part of my healing was just when I was single, healing my inner relationship between my masculine and feminine. And then that was reflected to me in the outer world. But like, that's really where it starts.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't it though? Do you remember the first time that you really felt like you integrated that?
I just had this breakthrough. I was in the middle of giving a massage. I'm a massage therapist. And I was like, I actually imagined individual people, like they were characters. And I saw the way that my masculine went to rescue everyone else and was just like, it was a codependence of like, I give and I give and I give and I take care of everybody. And then I take care of her last. And I realized that the relationships that I had been attracting were an absolute reflection of that. I attracted people where they had other things that were more important, like an ex-girlfriend or a career, or it could be anything, but it was like, that was the priority. And I wasn't, and it was a reflection of the fact that I wasn't my own priority. And I think you talked in a post about just taking radical responsibility and realizing like, I'm the common denominator. And for me, that was this massive breakthrough, because I was like, well, if it's me, then I can heal it,
Well, isn't that so empowering? And that was it for me too, as I used to have the Raggedy Ann of, I only attract emotionally unavailable men, and then it was like, well, wait a minute. The reason why I did that is I also was emotionally unavailable. Right. So it made sense why, he may live in another country, or he may work too much, or he's a surgeon, or, he's just left his partner and he's, feeling things out. I mean, it served me. And you're right. I mean, that was like, you don't do that in therapy, at least not the therapist that I've seen,
It's okay. It's not your fault. Like, no,
yeah.
it's my fucking fault.
Exactly. It's my fault, damn it. And I want you to tell me stage 3, your fault. Yeah, it's so to me that I get turned on when I have like a breakthrough. It's like, whoa, okay.
Here we go. I know. It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, this has been such a good conversation. Can I ask you like one more question? I want to be respectful of your time, but can I ask you like one more question, and then I'll ask you how we can find you and work with you? Okay. You had this post where you were talking about accepting and allowing and letting go when things don't work out. And I just would love to dive a little bit deeper into this.
Yeah, that's so personal for me too, because my emotional home was me being tenacious and me, I was going to stay no matter what, which is interesting because I've had lots of relationships, and I can pretty much, I never, even though we were really poor growing up, I've never really been concerned about money per se, because I know that I can go figure it out. It's just interesting. It's like that hypervigilance from the traumatic childhood. But I would stay too long in relationships. I would stay too long. And it was what came to me. And this is actually kind of recently too, that last 5%, was my daddy has passed away now. And we reconciled in such years right after my son was born. My son's 24 now, but which is so hard to believe, actually, when I say that out loud, is I was living vicariously through these men who would drop me. And I chose not to. You can't divorce your daddy. Like, it's your daddy, And so of course I'm going to give this person another chance. Of course I'm going to step in and offer to pay for therapy or pay for this coach or pay for us to go to Tony Robbins or whatever it is. I mean, I would overcompensate, and it's so emasculating, number one, right? It's also super mothering, emasculating.
Yes.
And a man that will allow us to do that, they've got their own stuff too. But it was a way, it's controlling. I mean, it was a very controlling thing to do. And so for me, it was a lot of belief. It was belief work I had to do,
Yeah.
and practice the art, literally, of allowing myself to feel that feeling of, if you've ever gone like the Tower of Terror at Disney or something, where you're about to go, you feel your stomach just end up in your throat. It's that feeling of letting go. And John has been really great for me regarding that, because we have literally done practices where we call it the sacred pause, like this sacred pause where I will go to, we have a little beach place. I go to the beach place, and we won't talk, like we won't talk for a few days. And when we first started doing it, I could feel my nervous system like, right. But we had a container where this and this, but
Yeah.
it allowed me to stretch the nervous system. It's sort of like when you're allowing your kids to sleep through the night, right? If whoever's done that, I don't know, I think they say it's not good to do it now, but we did it to Cameron. He's living, he's all right. It's like he's doing all right. He's doing okay. And but yeah, it's like this crawl to walk to run.
Yeah.
And but it's also knowing, for me, because of the abandonment wound and daddy leaving, and all that, is to be in a partnership where you can share these things and they're not used against you. What I used to do is I would show all my cards up front, allowing a man to completely manipulate me. You know what I mean? So they knew that if they left me, or got mad at me, and it didn't, and ghosted me or something, and then called me the next day, that there was a way they could start to control me.
Mhm.
It's just that thing of like going slow, but
Yeah.
revealing at the same time. So it is that, like Melanie talks about, 1 foot in gratitude, 1 foot in desire. It's that 1 foot in revealing, 1 foot in groundedness, 1 foot in revealing,
Yes.
1
Yes.
foot in groundedness.
This duality of like, it's like space and softness, or warmth and mystery. Like you've got to have both for it to be
Yes.
magnetic.
100%. And that's the enchanting piece. And for us, I think one of the biggest emotions, like the joy that women have such a hard time tapping into, is also curiosity, because we want certainty. Certainty allows us to, have control. And, one of my, I don't think this is a Tony quote, but he said it all the time, the quality of your life is indicative to the amount of uncertainty you can live with. And that's,
Say we need two of the needs of the 6 needs. One is for certainty, and the other is also for uncertainty.
yeah. So certainty
Oh,
is like our basic needs. It's like our basic needs. And, for me, I went from certainty to significance, like most people do when they start doing that work. But, I know during COVID, when I was working with people, including myself, but especially in the beginning when we didn't really know what was going on,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It was like everybody was certainty driven. We didn't know what the heck was happening. And then that for me, though, if I live too much in certainty now, like my body shuts down. I mean, you and I are the same design. So you can, like, I feel my root, I'm stiff.
Get bored.
It's boring. Yeah. And I need variety. Like I need that, but that curiosity of the archetype I think about, I name all these different archetypes, but the one that's so curious is similar to, you think about Marilyn Monroe, when she's like the white dress and then the air goes up from the vent. She's like, everything is like, it's like, it's being excited about life. And we need to be excited about life. And so, especially people like us, but, highly feminine beings. And it all we have to do is watch children. Just watch them. That we can learn everything we need by watching kids, and actually bringing that in. And that is very difficult for women to do. And so many women that come to work with me, because I have my one-on-one programs and group programs, but the women that judge other women for being highly feminine beings, which I used to as well. It's because there's jealousy there. We want a little bit of that, even though we may not be able to admit it at first.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
true.
There's freedom. There's freedom in it, right? So yeah, that letting go piece was, knowing when it's time to let go. It's not easy. I mean, that's really a lesson that, because I had a habit. That's the interesting thing, right? My nervous system was so used to the toxicity of that everything had to be hard.
Yeah.
Making money, could make a lot of money, but it had to be hard. Relationships, I could have great sex, but damn, that it had to be makeup sex. I had, and so that felt normal. So with someone like John, it was, oh God, this is so boring. It was honestly holding the duality of, oh, I'm so grateful I'm in this great relationship. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in this great relationship.
Because you're right. We can be addicted to sadness, but we could also be addicted to literally addicted to stress hormones.
Yeah,
Like,
it is.
When you have had a traumatic childhood. And that's the thing, that was a huge, huge healing piece for me, is when I realized that I don't think that these horrible toxic guys are attractive anymore. I'm kind of bored with that. And I'm ready. And I was actually ready for the real thing, for somebody who did what they said. But there was this reconditioning period where I was like, this doesn't feel the same. It felt good. And I was so attracted to him, but it wasn't like that toxic, high,
Yes.
Oh my God, because that's reliving a really toxic pattern created in childhood. And it does feel like home until
it does. It is so interesting. And so that's why when I'm working with women before, if they do the masculine cleanse with me, and then we go and do the relationship vision, because the man that they'll be attracted to, in the beginning of our work will be very different. And they fight me at first. And that's why the masterclass that I'm doing is not just for women who are single, but it's for women like us who are in partnership, knowing that we actually want a holy union, a sacred union. And so we actually want to invoke more from them and from ourselves. So what can we do to turn on the art, to turn on our flame? And, I work with a lot of women who have been married 20, 25, 30 years. And John and I, since COVID, is over 300 relationships, and several of them, they were divorced and coming back together. So so it's powerful, this work. And we're living it. I mean, we literally are living the work, and we're testing it and testing it again and testing it again. It really is what, and I know for me also, being in a growth model, I mean, I'm in a very growth model. I want to grow and I love to learn, and it can be exhausting too, in a way. So it's like, I can't unlearn what I know. Like, you can't either, we just can't. And so many people are walking around asleep, and they're okay. That's okay. For me, I want to have the deeper relationship, what I call deep, because to me, there's always another meaning. There's always another meaning. And what does this mean? And so that's why I get excited now when I get triggered, because it's like, what is this going to teach me? Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh yes, but we have to be careful. Are we always looking for the trigger for exactly like you just said a few minutes ago? So it's a catch-22, and it's just, it's a delight. It's a delight. And you're a total delight. This has been so much fun.
This has been amazing.
So much fun. I can't wait to talk to you again. We'll talk again outside of podcast. So good.
I can't wait for that either. Could you tell us before you go how we can find you? I know with the masterclass, but can you just tell it, and I'll link your Instagram, but just tell us really quick.
Yeah, for sure. So Sandy Sembler on Instagram. And then also I have a great quiz. It's sandysembler.com/quiz. And that actually is it's a fun masculine and feminine quiz. And then sandysembler.com/masterclass is the masterclass on Tuesday. And it will be recorded if you can't, come live. If you want to catch that recording, that would be great. And I'd love that too. So I don't know when you're going to actually show this, but I can send over some links for you too.
Is it every Tuesday that you do it?
I don't do it every Tuesday.
I'll try to put this up then. I'll put it at the top.
Well then, yay.
You.
Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. But if anything, the quiz is great. But yeah, Instagram and everything Sandy Sembler is that's me. So this has been so much fun. This is exactly what I meant when John has said before, I just don't think you want to work. I'm like, no, this is work. I love to share this experience and see people get it. And I can't wait to, I'm going to message you and we'll talk about self-care. I'm curious if you like reframe what
Okay.
self-care is.
Yeah, this is going to be a whole new journey for me.
Yeah, especially if you think about, I mean, even if there's a way, like make a practice of how you can actually have self-care while you're actually with a client. Like, how can you actually make art out of the fact of, even if it's just the way I don't know exactly whether it's like the room or the way you change the sheets or the way you even the feeling you feel when you book a client.
When I'm doing Reiki, I feel that like I'm receiving as much as I'm giving because it's not coming from me at all. It's just coming through me and I'm just the conduit. And so I always feel after I do a session, even if I give a massage, but I'm using the Reiki.
Yes.
I'm like, I feel just as good as this person on my table.
I know, it's interesting. I use theta healing and pranic healing too. And I get so energized, just witnessing someone's transformation. But as you said, I mean, we're not the healers. Things are just coming through us, right? We're just channeling. And it's just delicious. It's delicious. I don't know if there's ever been a client. There was one and we decided it was better for us to, I dreaded getting on the call with her. She was just tough. And it wasn't that I couldn't handle her. It's like, life gets to be easy for me now, right? I don't have to do that. And she was very grateful. She wanted more of a hardcore, and that's just, I mean, I can be that for sure. But she wanted more like super, super masculine out the gate, and
Give me the formula.
Exactly. Give me the 7 ways that, no. No. So but that felt really good though, to be boundaried and to, for me to let her go. And, it was so interesting being able to let go and using that same practice I just mentioned, in my other relationships, setting those boundaries and such. So listen, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? I mean, I'm 52 years old and I have a lot of patterns in this body of mine. And, it's like I'm tofu. I walk outside and it's like life just gives me the flavor so I have to be mindful and zip myself up. And I think clearing our energy and understanding that especially those that are a light, understand that we are a light and then that people can put their energetic hooks in us too. So taking that spiritual bath, imagine that we're just taking a bath and washing that off is so great. Even though you and I've had a great time and people that will watch this, they may, they may not even mean it to be negative, but that's why I always am zipping myself up before I go online and things like that, because, you just never know. You just never know what's out there. And I think that's just the way, like giving ourselves a prayer, like just pray for protection all the time. Not out of fear, but out of the fact that we want to conserve our energy so we can do what you and I love to do, which is to share our story.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Amazing. I am just, oh.
Yeah, this has been so delicious. I love this. It's so fun. When I got your questions, because I got them today, I was like, oh yes. Well, also I felt my feminine felt so seen and heard and understood. I went, this woman really, like, she paid attention to me. It felt like when John and I were dating and I saw like he had in my address, my little contact, he had like my ring size, like my bra size. He had all this. He did my Myers-Briggs. You know what I mean? It's like he told. Now listen, if we were dating, I would have thought he was a stalker, right? That would have been weird. But I was like, this woman really, and I felt so seen. And I was really, really special. Thank you for taking that extra time. I know you do that with everyone. And that was super special. Thank you.
You're welcome. I was just blown away by your content. It was so fun for me to go through it and to come up with those questions. And I love this conversation. I am so excited for everyone in my community to hear it. And I can't wait.
Yeah. Let's stay in touch for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah. You too, love. See you. Bye.